So we can take a few questions now. Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor Gilmartin, for that fantastic presentation. I have two quick questions. One about whether you think there is underlying, I mean, in this country we talk about a lot about, Sindhi nationalism, Pashtun nationalism, etc., Pakistani nationalism, but there isn't enough talk, because I think it's hidden from the view, of a kind of Punjabi nationalism that undergirds a lot of politics, and around the question of dams and water. It manifests itself, and you mentioned that in your book as well, around people like Hanif Rame and others who talk about this in detail. So a bit about that and how that links to ideas, and really, in a strange way, sort of takes us in a very different idea of provincial politics, where Punjab is actually seen as a province, and in the 18th and post-18th Amendment world, this would have implications. The second point was a question about how far do you think, since you say a lot of these are implicated in provincial and local politics, how far do you think Modi's recent statement could be seen as part of this kind of electoral politics, where they're facing potentially a defeat at the hands of the Aam Aadmi Party, and how far these could be seen in the context of that? Thank you.
Yeah, so first on the question of the Punjab's position in these controversies and Punjabi nationalism, of course there are many other angles than simply the issue of water to think about these issues, but my sense of it is that Punjabi, what you might call Punjabi nationalism on this, is completely reactive. That is, this on the water issue, identification with the Indus Basin as a unified river basin serves Punjab's interest, and therefore the idea of a technical unified river basin defined by science generally is absolutely in keeping with what Punjab sees as its interest. However, in response to attacks from Sindh or from NWFP, from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or wherever, there has been a lot of much more emotive nationalist rhetoric which comes out around this, but I would see this as much more reactive than actually generated by this. As far as Modi's comments, I think absolutely what you just suggested is right on the money. That this is a very old story. That to understand what Modi's saying about the treaty, I mean, of course, it's in certain ways an attack on Pakistan, but it's really has to do far more with the politics of what's going on in the Punjab, the eastern Punjab, Indian Punjab, because that's the context in which this is coming right now. And so, I mean, once elections are over, then I would expect a very different sort of rhetoric, but again, I don't have any idea for sure on that.
So, Najib Sahab at the back.
Thank you for your excellent talk, sir. You sounded so much like a nationalist Pakistani when you spoke in front of us. Maybe we want to imagine you as one. Thank you for clearing temples, the dams are the temples of part of India. I never knew it was done in Batra Dam's inauguration. I think Pakistan's survival, and I have to say this openly to my countrymen, there's nothing to hide, is that we have to build build the Indus Cascade, starting from Scarborough and Shayok dams, clearing the waters for the very huge Bunji project, reducing the height of Diamond Pasha because it's been made dangerously high by certain Sindhi nationalists who control Mapda, and bringing it down, making a safer dam, and making the 4 HPPs coming down, making Kalabagh, which is absolutely essential for flood control and environmental issues. And we have global warming waters. India is doing the Prabhu report. We have to build the Indus Cascade. Fortunately, the Indian River cannot be drilled into by the Indians at Kashmir because it's a very deep ravine, it's very high, and most of the Indus waters come into the Indus River main in our northern areas, which they are trying to show as Greater Kashmir, so in case there's any dispute or something, they might try to control the river Indus. Indus River, main Indus River is our salvation. And I think not only that, but our report, we made a report last month, it's a national report, me and my panel. We are trying to pursue this in the World Bank and everywhere else. And friends like you, we need you to convey our message that Pakistan has to build the Indus Cascade. We have to overcome these internal chaos and problems which we discussed. And I thank you very much for having highlighted all these issues so beautifully. Thank you.
Would you like to make any comments? Okay, very good comments. Any other question, comment?
I did. To what extent do you think the narratives that was framed differently based in India and Pakistan? In Pakistan, you had the Sindhis talking about the integrity of the Indus River, the meaning of this river, and then on the Indian side, you had the Punjabis talking about the integrity of the basin. It has to do with the fact that where the kind of gradients that emanates, where is it located? Is it located downstream or is it located at the top? So is that a factor in terms of how you would portray the gradients, where you're located in terms of the geography of the fiber?
Between, you mean that the Indians are the upper riparian?
Yeah. Well, is it just the fact that you locate? I mean, is it just an outcome of the location, or is it the way you think about this?
Yeah, I mean that's an issue. It's always an issue, but I don't think that explains entirely what's going on, because there are different political frameworks that are involved, and I mean, you can't simply explain it that way. I mean, it wasn't cast in stone that the Indus Waters Treaty would take the form it did. I mean, the imperatives that were created by a treaty which tried to deal with the water issue by ignoring really the question of who was upper and lower riparian, and by dividing rivers geographically, with the eastern rivers going to India and the western to Pakistan. So this was an attempt at a settlement of conflict which really tried to sidestep entirely the problem of the riparian position, which of course was impossible. And I mean, this is why the treaty has never entirely solved anything, but which, by doing that, it created this particular imperative to reconstruct the river basin, two separate river basins, as independent sorts of things, even as in many ways they remained, of course, a single river basin. So the question of the relationship of all this to the positioning as upper and lower riparians, I think is quite complicated. And there's a very distinctive history here, so I wouldn't make a generalization about that.
Okay. I think we have run out of time in some sense. If there is a very pressing, sort of very quick question, then we can, or we can move on to closing comments. Okay, so just very quickly.
Sir, you mentioned in the beginning that there are two sources of sovereign authority. One that is drawn from a direct exercise of power, and the other from morality. So, would it be right if I say that only in West Punjab and probably in Rajasthan we see the moral appropriation of that sovereign authority? The rest of the areas show resistance to that sovereign authority, which has been drawn from only, a direct exercise of power.
Yeah, well, I think there's, I mean, in terms of the river basin itself, I think that's right. I was suggesting that it's particularly Punjab, which has seen itself as benefiting from this particular vision of a unified river basin, and therefore that sovereign vision carries weight, in Punjab, and less so. Though I think it is worth noting that the Sindhi claim to the Indus River is also a sovereign claim, which is appealing to a certain morality and a claim that the state has some moral responsibility to protect the river and protect Sindh's interests. So I think there's something in what you're saying, but I wouldn't make the distinction quite as stark, I think, as you were suggesting.
Okay, very good. Let's give a round of applause to I hope that low price edition of the book would be available very soon for part of Pakistan to be able to at least get a handle on the book. I've noticed is that there's an electronic edition of the book available, but again, only to certain universities who have access to the given by, of course, the University of California Press. But I think that will be helpful.
Distribution. Yeah, well, thank you.
All right, so we come to the close of today's proceedings. Before we close, may I just ask Babur Sahab just to say very quickly a few words of wisdom before we just say goodbye. Yeah. I think you're fine.
Thank you very much. Can you hear? Yeah. No, I'd like to congratulate Abu Bakr for organizing this, and also thank our foreign participants and local participants who made the discussion extremely rich. I've learned a lot this afternoon, and I want to make sure, I hope this is being recorded, and I hope this will be useful for us in future deliberations. This will enrich our own knowledge. And I'd again like to thank all the participants who have contributed tremendously to our learning this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you all. Once again, thank you to all the panelists and speakers who have come from far away, taking very long flights, sometimes with long delays. Especially Professor Jimmy Westcoat, Professor David Gilmartin from University of Oxford, Adil, Rinjan Mirza from Belgium, Danish coming from England, and if I'm forgetting somebody also, to all the participants who have come here on this Sunday morning, and of course apologies for the delay that we have experienced in the proceedings. Thank you once again, and hope to see all of you.